Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, and welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi. We begin a brand new Masechta, Maseches Nazir. We begin at the Mishnah Daf Beis Amud Aleph. Kol kinuye nizirus kinizirus. Just as when a person expresses an outright, straightforward expression where he commits himself to being a Nazir. I am a Nazir. Which sets forth a system where he refrains from any grape products. B. He refrains from becoming Tamei Lameis, attending a Levaya, etc. 3. He lets his hair grow, so it propels him to a higher level of Kedusha, at least for the time being, for his 30-day duration. Just as if he expresses it outright. That commits him, that obligates him to become a Nazir, to conduct himself in this manner. Likewise, if he uses a kinui literally means like a nickname. Here it means a mispronouncement. So instead of saying the word Nazir, he uses a similar sounding word. Nazik, Naziach, Paziach, the Mefarish over here on the right side, who incidentally, the Chida writes, is a different Pirush. It's actually not Rashi, it's the same Mefarish as the Mefarish on Maseches Nedarim. Some say he's Rabbi Yehuda Bar Nosson Zatzal. In any case, the Mefarish says something interesting, that the examples that the Mishnah will present, the list of kinuyim, Nazik, Naziach, Paziach, are all similarly spelled, meaning he says, take the word Nazik. Instead of Nazir, it's a kuf at end. So just remove that leg, the leg of the kuf, you end with a resh, right? Nazich. So the ches, all you need to do is delete erase the left side of the ches, and you have your resh back. Paziach, the same similarly. So interesting, it's the similar spelling. Some ask on the Mefarish, what's it got to do with expressions where it's verbal, it's word related? What does that have to do with the way it's spelled? Interesting observation of the Mefarish. In any case, that's the idea of kinuyim. Now, by the way, in Maseches Nedarim, we also started with the same presentation. We have kinuyim, we have yodos coming up soon, and over there we had two shitas. We had Rabbi Yehuda and Reish Lakish. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, the concept of kinuyim was that he called it lashon nachrim. It's like a slang that goyim use, so it's a sort of a perversion of the actual word, and that's called kinuyim. Reish Lakish actually learns these were words that were invented, that were coined by the Chachamim in order to avoid actually using the word Nazir, because that might lead him to say Nazir Lashem. When you say Nazir, you tend to just speak, biblically, the way the pasuk speaks, and use the lashon hakra, which is Nazir Lashem, and we're afraid that he might say the word Nazir and stop. It might say Lashem and then stop before he says the word Nazir, in which case he'll say Hashem's name for naught. So the Chachamim encouraged the use of these words, which they coined specifically for this purpose. So we have Rabbi Yehuda, who says these are actually forms of expression used by the Goyim, and we have Reish Lakish, who says these were words invented and coined specifically for this purpose. Okay, in any case, the concept is the same, despite the fact that he hadn't actually said the word Nazir clearly. Rather, he used a sort of an off version of that word. It works. Kol kinuye nizirus kinizirus. It has the same effect as actually saying the word Nazir. And the Mishnah here is sort of missing a line. The Gemara will explain that the Mishnah here also is trying to allude to another idea called yodos, handles. So even if you've expressed yourself incompletely, it was an incomplete expression. It's like the handle of a kli. You grab the handle, you have access to the kli. Right? You can actually take the kli away just by holding its handle. Here as well, a simple, half expression which we understand is trying to make reference to something broader, something bigger, like becoming a Nazir. That partway expression, it also is committal. The Rashba learns it's based on the fact that the Dvarim Shebelev, those feelings, those thoughts that are inside your mind and heart, combine with that partial expression, with that incomplete verbalization, it combines and it joins together and creates a commitment. So that's Yodis, and in fact the Mishnah will now elaborate on Yodis. Give us some examples of Yodis, incomplete expressions. Ha'imar, ahei, he says, I'm going to be. And the Gemara says, we're speaking that there is a Nazir standing right before him. And he's alluding to that Nazir. I will copycat him. I will emulate him. Even though he didn't actually express it clearly, it works. Hare is a Nazir that commits him to being a Nazir based on the concept of Yodis. Another example, or ahei no'eh, I will be nice. No'eh is lashon of nice, of pretty. I'll let my hair grow like a Nazir. That's also sort of a partial, incomplete expression. That too makes him a Nazir. Now let's go back to examples of kinuyin, slangs. Instead of saying the word Nazir, he says, I'm going to be a Nazik, Naziach, Paziach. This too works, Harez and Nazir. Here we have more examples of unclear expressions. Hareni Kazeh, he has a Nazir standing before him. He says, I'm going to be like him. Hareni Misalsal, I'm going to be a fellow taking care of his hair. Referring to himself, I'm going to take care of my hair. Hareni Mechalka, I'm going to produce hair. Harei Lashleach Pera, it's incumbent upon me. I'm obligating myself to let my hair grow long. In all these, we say Harei Nazir. What about Harei Tziparim? I'm committing to bringing birds. Now, that's specific to a Nazir who becomes Tameh throughout the time of Naziris, in which case at the end of his Tahara process, before he goes back and tries again, he has to bring a animal asham and 2 birds, one for an oila, one for a chatas. That's different than a Nazir Tahar who concludes his Naziris by bringing 3 animal karbanis. Chatas, oila, and shlamim. So this fellow says, I am going to bring birds, which perhaps alludes to the birds of a Nazir Tameh, so he's trying to allude to the idea of a Nazir. Does that work? Rab Meir Omer Nazir. This commits him to becoming a Nazir, because that's what his kavana was. That was his intention. That isn't necessarily binding. The Gemara will explain the reason for this. Asks the Gemara, why does Nazir at all belong in, amongst these Masechtes that discuss marriage? Why does it belong in Seder Nashim? If anything, Nazir is Kedusha, it's carbon related. Perhaps Seder Kachim should be where it belongs. Michtik, let's analyze what's going on. Tana b'Seder Nashim Kai. Our Tana is in the midst of discussing Seder Nashim. We have Yevamis, Ksubis. My Taima, Tani Nazir. Why do we include Nazir amongst the Nashim related Mesechtes? Answers the Gemara, Tana Akra Kai, because our Tana is related to the pasuk. How do we get a divorce? If she loses favor in his eyes because she did something wrong, he discovered that she was behaving inappropriately. How does that happen? And the point is like this: what brings about inappropriate behavior? Overdose of wine, which clouds a person's judgment. As we learned, a person notices, a person experiences the kilkul of saita, the perversion of the saita, the issue who strays from her husband. He must take very profound lesson, very personal lesson from that. He should refrain from wine. Keep away for a while, get on the safe side of things, gain a vantage point and clarity, and then go back to the world. So that's the message being sent here. Rabbi Yisai, an Isha has gitten. Why? Because of the concept of straying, of saita. That leads us to Nazir. Now you'll ask, of course, so then it should be saita and then Nazir. Isn't that the sequence? First you notice the saita, then you take lesson, and you are mazir atzmim na yain. So the Mefarsh explains there's another reason for that, because in Ksubos we had a discussion of Nedarim that brought us to Maseches Nedarim, and of course a natural extension of Maseches Nedarim is Maseches Nazir. It's pretty much one and the same idea, accepting upon oneself a commitment for a certain amount of time, etc. That's why we placed it over here, but really it's here on account of Saita, which is the following Masechta after Nazir. Now we have another kasha. Let's take a look at the opening statement of the Mishnah. How do we start? Kol kinuye niziris k'niziris. Even a mispronounced expression of the word nazir counts. And then The Mishnah continues, not by elaborating on kinuyin, rather the Mishnah sort of shifts ha'omer ahei, which is a incomplete lashon. That's a totally different idea. That's yadais. Pasach b'kinuyin. So we start the perek, we start the Mishnah, the Masechta with a reference of kinuyim, mefarish yadais. So why didn't we go ahead and elaborate on a different topic on yadais? Rava v'yitem kedi. Rava, some say it was just an anonymous, unrelated, unnamed source. We don't know who. Kedi is just unknown. Whatever it is, somebody explained that in fact the Mishnah is missing some words. Rabbi Yehuda Kessler wrote the Mishnah in very concise form, assuming we'll understand. Of course, when the Doris got weaker and weaker, we have difficulty deciphering what lies between the lines, and in fact we have to read the Mishnah as though it's missing some words. Read it as follows. You start with the words kol kinuyei nizirus kinizirus, all forms of kinuyim work, v'yadais nizirus kinizirus, and likewise an incomplete expression, even if it's said outright without perversion of the words, but it's sort of a half statement. Yadis Nizirus, that is also considered Kinizirus. And the Mishnah goes and elaborates on this most recent item mentioned, the concept of Yadis. Ve'eluhin Yadis, and the following are considered Yadis. Ha'omer ahei ha'rezen naz. Asks the Gemara, why don't we go in order? V'lifresh Kinuyi Bereisha. If we start with Kinuyim, why don't we go back to Kinuyim? Answers the Gemara, Tana Mahuda Solik Hahu Mefarish Bereisha. The practice of the Tana is to relate back to the most recently mentioned idea, which is Yadais. And that's why we choose to elaborate on Yadais first. We start with Kinuyin, move on to Yadais, and then reference back to Yadais. And then later we go back to Kinuyin, as we find in three separate places. Kedisnan, a Mishnah, and Shabbos, Bameb Madlikin. What type of material can one use when he lights candles on Shabbos? Something which will be successfully lit without any concern of having to tinker with it on Shabbos. What are materials which are not suitable? And the Mishnah continues, Umafarish. What does the Mishnah elaborate on? It gives us a long list of Ein Madlikin. Bereisha, that's the first thing we explain. Apparently, that's the way to do it. Keep things clear, keep things in order. Just go back to the most recently mentioned item. Another example is Bamed Toimnin. What materials can one use to insulate his cooked food on Shabbos? What are you not meant to insulate with in preparation for Shabbos? So we have yes and what not, and we continue to elaborate on the most recently mentioned item, which is what not to use. Mafarish ein Toimnin Bereisha, that we discussed first. Another example is Bameisha Yaitza. What ornaments can a Isha wear in the street on Shabbos? So we start with the positive. What may she not wear? And then when we elaborate, we first elaborate on the most recently mentioned item, what not. So three examples prove our point. It is preferable to keep things clear, concise, in order. That's the proper structure. We start with one thing, we move on to the next, then we elaborate on that item first before we go back to the original item. Says the Gemara, I'll give you two examples of Mishnayos where they are structured differently. We don't go back to the most recently mentioned item. Rather, we revert back to the original item. The first on the list, we go down in order. What items can a behema wear in the street? What can she not wear? We go back to the positive. What can a camel wear? Another example, there are some relatives who have a two-way inheritance relationship, so to speak. Standard is yesh noichlan umanchilon. Some relatives inherit from each other and inherit to each other, like a father and a son. It's a two-way street. Noichlan, sometimes it's just noichel. He receives from that relative upon that relative's death. But they don't transfer to that relative upon their death. Manchilin, they give it, they don't take. They don't take, they don't give. So we have four separate categories. And then when we go back to side examples, what do we go back to? To the first one on the list. We go back to the first item. So we have two examples of Mishnayos where it's not as you suggested. We go back to the first item. Answers the Gemara, you're 100% right. Sometimes it's like this, and sometimes it's like that. There's always a reason. Certainly sometimes it's done this way, sometimes done that way. Rather, it's like this. You see, the first three examples that you cited, What may you light on Shabbos? What may you use for Hatmana? What may a person wear on the street on Shabbos? Those things pertain to a person's personal obligations, a person's personal Yisurim. And therefore it's important to discuss what to keep away from. That's very important. Mefarish Yisura the Nafshei Bereisha will begin by focusing sort of on the Isra, on the negative. Don't do this, don't do that, and then we'll go on to explain the exceptions and what may be done. First get the Isra straight before you continue. As opposed to the last two examples regarding what the animal wears and regarding the Yerusha, that's explained like this. Gabe behema the Isura. Aidi behemahu. When it comes to what the animal can wear, that's not a personal issue. That's what your animal is meant to do. Of course, a person is obligated to look after his animal. If a person's animal wears stuff that carries stuff in the street, it's an issue, but it's not as severe as a personal mice. Aidi behemu da'asi. It's an issue which comes to him via the behema. It's not as severe, and therefore we can sort of allow ourselves to be mefarish atera bereisha to discuss the permissible items first. Interesting idea. So we discussed the mutter first, and likewise when it comes to Yerusha, there's a reason why we did it differently. The reason why the Mishnah decided to elaborate on the first item on the list rather than the most recently mentioned item, like over here by Nazirus, the reason is because we want to be mefarish the primary form of Yerusha first. Typically, it's a two-way Yerusha, and that's why we want to focus on that first. When it comes to Nazirus, Lifresh Kinui Bereisha asks the Gemara, well, if that's the case, let's do the Kinuyan first. If that's the first item on the list, says the Gemara, I'll tell you why it's not done this way. Meaning we have to explain why the Mishnah would choose one way or the other. Over here, we don't seem to have any real explanation. It's personal, it's gufe, it's nafshe. Why don't we just go in order? We started with Kinuyim and moved on to Yodais. Go back and explain Kinuyim. Ella Tam. The reason is like this. Yodais, the reason why we focus and we elaborate on Yodais first, even though we started with Kinuyim, we went from Kinuyim to Yodais, and we are mefarish examples of Yodais first. Since the concept of Yodais was derived from a drasha. We learned back in Nazir and Sari and Nadar and Daf Gimel, Nazir Lahazar, we have a drasha for it. There's Torah Shabbat Peh, which was toiled on and produced through effort of the Chachamim, and therefore Chavivin is something very dear to them. And we want to discuss that first. Asks the Gemara, well, if that's the case, then talk about it first. Let it be the first on the list. Start the Mishnah with Yadais, if it's so special and dear to you. Answers the Gemara, no. Tana. The Tana follows the following system. When he begins and starts a discussion, Maschel be'ikar carbon. It makes sense to open with the standard, the classic example of a Nazirus expression, which is the word Nazir. Ikar carbon here means just the main form of expression of commitment. Carbon is usually the lashon used by Nadarim. So the Gemara uses that lashon here. It means to say the primary form of expression, the primary form of commitment, which is actually the word Nazir, and all its variations. Nazik, Naziach, Paziach, Kinuyin refers to the primary expression of Nazir. So that's the proper way of opening up the discussion. When it comes to explaining and elaborating, we could very well understand why the Tana preferred discussing Yadis because of the Chavivas, because it comes from a drasha. So that's why we start with Kinuyim, which is something which refers to the Ikar word Nazir. We move on to Yadis, which is the part that's missing in the Mishnah. It's a Chsur Mechsur, we fill in the blanks, and then we focus on Yodais because of the Chavivas, and then we go back to examples of Kinuyim. Now the Mefarish points out, this is all good and well if in fact, Kinuyim, remember we mentioned before that there's machlekes. Some say Kinuyim is Loshen Umois. These are foreign languages. So that way we understand why we start with Kinuyim, because it's just another way of saying Nazir. But if Kinuyim were coined by the Chachamim, in order to avoid using the word Nazir, lest he get into the word Hashem, etc. So these aren't really words. They're just, words invented for this occasion. Why would the Mishnah start with the word Nazik, Naziach, Pazech? Why would we start with Kinuyim, which aren't really the Ikar Lashon? So the Mefarish says, you're right, according to that pshat, we're going to have to rearrange the Mishnah. The Mishnah starts, in fact, with Yadais. That's the missing sentence in the Mishnah, the starting sentence. We move on to Kinuyim, we go back to Yadais because of the Chavivas, then we move on to Kinuyim and explain them as well. Okay, let's shift over to Yadais. examples of which are as follows. So Eimer, he says, hey, I'm going to be what? How is a nazir? That makes him a nazir. Why? Dilma, batanas ka'amar. Perhaps he's committing to fast. I'm going to fast. How do we know it relates to nazirus? Amar Shmuel, as mentioned before, kigoin shahaya nazir over lefanav. There was a real nazir, a live nazir, taking a walk right before this fellow, right in front of him. And when he says hey, we all know he means I'm going to be like this fellow. Now, the fact that Shmuel insists that there's another nazir there to substantiate our understanding of his declaration would indicate that according to Shmuel, Lema Kasavar Shmuel apparently holds Yodayim, this type of partial expression, She'enan Machichas, which don't really prove much. If it's ambiguous, there's no nazir standing there and we don't know what he meant. Nazir, does he mean Tainus? Yodayim, we don't treat them as Yodayim, they're not committal. Is that true? And really we had a big machlokes about this in Adarim, whether Yodayim have to be something which are clear or even ambiguous Yodayim work. Shmuel seems to hold that it has to be clear. That's why we need a strong indication as to his intention. Answers the Gemara, no, not necessarily. Amri, the answer is Bizman Shenazir Over Lafanav. The reason why we need another standing there, because when there's another Nazir there, Leikal is Spuka B'Musachrina, there's no even suggestion that he means something else. There's another Nazir there, and he's referencing the Nazir. I'm going to emulate it. That's why we need a nazir there. Aval vada ain't a nazir over the fun of it. There's no nazir there. You have no idea, you have no clue what he means. I mean, and we can easily speculate. Do my batanis comer? Perhaps he's simply trying to become fast, to commit himself to fast, as we asked before, and therefore a nazir is required. You need to have some indication of what he has in mind. But let's say an example. Let's say of a yad she'enu chiches. The Farish brings. Let's say he says to an isha, Harayat Mekudeshes. You're Mekudesh. He doesn't say the word li. Harayat Mureses. Harayat li into. You're a wife. Without saying li. That's a Yadayim She'in Mechiches. And over there, perhaps, it would work, because what he's trying to do, we understand. Everybody understands. He's trying to make her his wife. So he forgot to say the word li. It's somewhat, ambiguous, but we get the message. We understand what he's trying to do, and therefore, perhaps it would work. Over here, we have no clue what he has in mind. He gets up one day, he says, Ahei. All right, good morning. What does Ahei mean? I'm going to be what? Maybe I'm going to be fasting. We have no idea. That's why you need a nazir standing there, just to give it the basic, classification of a yad. Right? Otherwise, it's not even a yad. So we sort of have three levels, right? Ahei, the word ahei alone without a nazir standing there is not even a yad. When there's another nazir there, that's called yadayim. Or when he says to an isha, Reyat Mureses, that's yadayim. But perhaps you don't need the next step. You don't need to be mechiches, that it should be so clear cut. Even something ambiguous is enough, as long as you have some reasonable basis to conclude that he meant as such. Asks the Gemara, 1 second. Okay, so he says ahei, and there is another standing there. Okay, maybe he meant like this. V'dilma lepoitra min karbonosav ka'amar. Perhaps he meant to say like this: I'm gonna stand in his stead pertaining to his karbonis. We know that a nazir has to bring karbonis. I am gonna substitute for him. I'm gonna take over his karbonis. I'm gonna pay for his karbonis. Maybe that's all he meant, right? So how do you know that he's trying to become a nazir himself? Answer: the Kamar Beliboy. He's claiming that he thought about it in his heart. He was trying to become a nazir. So we sort of combine that partial expression with the kavanah that he had in his life to become a nazir, and that commits him. If that's the case, of course it commits him. Why even discuss this? Perhaps I would say no. You have to actually express it. Thinking is not enough. Being on piv, we need that the expression coming out of his mouth, v'liboy, and the feelings in his heart, shavin, should collide, should combine, should be consistent. Meaning you have to actually express what you're feeling. As we know, typically we don't reckon with words in one's mind. The devarim shebalev einon devarim, right? Kamashmon, here the chiddush is no. We learn from our pasuk at yodis are sufficient. Why? Based on this idea, because we sort of combine your partial expression with what you were thinking in your heart, and that completes it. That completes the package and commits you. Another example of yodais is ahei no'eh. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to, have nice hair. Nazar, that makes him a nazar. How do you know that no'eh has anything to do with being a nazar? V'dilma ano l'fanav mitzvahs. A ka'amar. Maybe all he's trying to say is, I'm going to be extra careful, extra meticulous to beautify my mitzvahs. Because this son, as we learned, this pertains to other mitzvahs. This is my Hashem, and I'll beautify myself before Him in terms of my mitzvah fulfillment. I'm going to make for Hashem a nice sukkah. Lulav no, a nice lulav. Tzitzis no, echtev lefanov sefer Torah no. I'll make for him a nice sefer Torah. I'll wrap the sefer Torah b'shiroi noim with pleasant materials. So being nice is not exclusive to being a nazir. Amar Shmuel shatafas b'sa'arei v'amer. What happened was that he grabbed a hold of his hair and he said, I'm going to be no'eh, indicating that I'm going to beautify my hair. I'm going to make my hair long and cut it off for Hashem. Asks the Gemara, well, the lashon no'eh and the concept of becoming a nazir, they're not really compatible. Nizira, milsada vera. Being a nazir is not something we recommend. Depriving oneself of wine, etc. It's not something Hashem really wants. It's sort of an avera v'amrin noah. We refer to it as noah. Why should we say it? The word noah refers to Nazirus when Nazirus actually is not something positive. Says the Gemara, it is actually. Even according to the Blazer HaKappa, the Amr who says Nazir choite, Nazir is considered a sinner. The pasuk says v'chiper olav ma'asher chot ala nefesh. He has to bring a carbon because he sinned. A Nazir is a sinner. Hani Mila, that's only Gabi Nazir Tummy. When a Nazir became Tummy and he has to cancel everything that he did and start over, the I did the boy Mister. Since on account of his tumah, he has to sort of cancel everything that he did and start all over again. The Amar Rachman, as the pasuk says, Vayavim Rishonim Yiplu, all the days of Nazirus that he kept until he became Nazir fall by the wayside. Kimat, kitime Nazir, because he became Tummy. That's a concern. Hasam, who over there the concern is Dilma Asala Mebral Nazirus, because the Nazirus is now getting longer and longer, something which they didn't anticipate, didn't count for, didn't plan for. Perhaps he won't be able to sustain himself and keep the halachis. That's why he's called a sinner. And the Mefarish brings the Gemara Nair. In fact, there's a chashash that he'll regret having committed himself to this type of thing. He didn't expect it to be that long. He's not really committed to it anymore. He's regretting. That's why he's called a chayta, aval nazar Torah, but a regular nazar, just a standard nazar who keeps the rules and, just keeps it for the set 30 days. Love chayte karbe, it's not called a chayte. And that's why the word noah, prettiness and beauty, can apply to a nazar. The Taisus actually asks, what do you mean? The Gemara says, simply refraining from wine, depriving is called a chayte. Why is the Gemara here dependent upon becoming tummy, etc.? So he says, true, even every nazar, even a nazar Torah did something wrong, but it's a slight aver, he calls it, which is overridden by the a good aspect of the Nazirus. It's a mitzvah which is Rabba lachet. There's a greater portion of mitzvah and it overrides a small mini chet. Very interesting idea. An element of chet overridden by the greater, broader mitzvah of keeping Nazirus. Apparently, it's not something which is meant for everybody. It's something which is not standard. We learned before, a person who's feel he needs that special experience to set him back on track, he's got to do it. It's not something which is standard. It is deprivation, which isn't the ideal, way of life. So it is considered a very tzas, Taisus says, but it's overridden by this positive aspect of Nazirus, which is bringing him, back on track. So that wouldn't be a concern. Rather, the concern is dafka becomes tamei, and that prolongs it, that makes it difficult to keep, and perhaps brings about regret. But typically, it's okay, and therefore the word no'eh, prettiness and beauty, can apply to this experience as well. Bottom line is, a person could be makabel nazirus by just saying, I'm being a nazir. What if he uses other forms of expression? Kinuyin, a misexpression, a slang word, or yadais, a partial expression. That works as well. The Mishnah begins with kinuyim, moves on to yadais, and then goes back to explain yadais because of the chavivas, since it comes from a drasha. The reason why Nazirus belongs in Mesechus Nashim, to teach one a lesson, discipline, self-control is the key to success and to the avoidance of many pitfalls that come along in life. We learned about the concept of yades, that it has to be something which indicates a Nazirus. We have another standing before him, and he refers to him as a ha. In the case of Nair, he's clutching his hair and indicating he wants to beautify that hair by keeping Nazirus. All the best to you, and Hatzlacha Rabbah to all of us, and much Besiras Tovas and Siyat L'Ishmaya.